Tonight on Ground Crew Command Radio, the big build-up begins. Full steam ahead. All levers have been pulled, and it's going to be quite a confrontation between that January the 10th all the way to the 12th. This is indeed a mass meditation and astrological event that may well decide what timeline we all put 2020 onto. This plus much more on a critical, huge, preparatory episode of Ground Crew Command Radio. This is the Unknown Light Warrior. This is Ground Crew Command Radio. You're listening to the Unknown Light Warrior. And so here we go with building up our energies for a critical event. It'll span over 72 hours. There will be 3 mass meditations. Different groups are doing mass meditations on the 11th. Other groups are doing it on the 12th. The 144K, because of its nature, professionalism, and the way it is, will be doing mass meditations on the 10th, 11th, and 12th, partly and primarily because the Black Covens will be hard at it on all those 3 dates. Once again, the 144K will be the only ones standing between them and humanity and Gaia's freedom and healing. So, it's a hardcore game, and the 144K are treating it as such. And we're going to get into some critical perspective, revealing understandings, not just phenomenology for phenomenology's sake, with the conversation with Mark of Great Awakening Report. And for those of you who've read the promotional article for this episode, I'm not kidding. And do not be under any illusions about the numbers that the starseed population will be up against. We're talking a good 2 to 3 million black magicians, Luciferians, whatever you want to call them, that will be doing mass rituals on most likely all 3 of those dates. And here we are, the starseed population. We just have to face the truth in order to transmute the situation. They're going to be doing their rituals in most local neighbourhoods where the attendance rate is fairly high, especially these days because they're in such deep doo-doo. Across America alone, it will definitely be a minimum 2 million versus hopefully 144,000 starseeds. And then we wonder and get frustrated as to why planetary liberation is taking so long. So for all it's worth, I've released the 6 critical elements to a successful starseed group. And although we will be making improvements to get the message through, the message is struggling to come down through the higher dimensions and into this dimension and the consciousness of incarnated starseeds. But I'm not giving up. And the fight continues. I'm all for focusing on what you want, focusing on the light, but without that 20% of that focus going on to what's actually there and truth in order to transmute it, the so-called quote-unquote dark stuff, you can forget about transmuting the dark stuff if it's not focused on, but we do have to look at things clinically in a unemotional way and just see what's there in terms of what could be the causes for the grinding slowness of planetary liberation. And again, the old, in the collective starseed sense, looking in the mirror. If we don't occasionally do that and act accordingly in terms of what we see clinically, the planetary liberation process will continue to be very, very slow. But again, that's on the current timeline. If enough of us participate in the ensuing mass meditations, especially this one coming up, it all changes yet again. And we upscale or increase the timelines. And I will get into some detail with regards to seeing ourselves as timeline selectors and actually utilizing that as a mindset and applying that mindset in our lives, in how we see ourselves. Timeline selectors. So that's the big deal, because one of the basic standard operating procedures that the Dark Ones have employed, they've, when things don't go the way they want them to go, they literally travel back in time, alter the timelines, and it goes in a negative direction. And like I said, I will be discussing more of this in detail. As always, on the 21st and on the 25th, during mass black magic rituals, the 144K was once again the only ones there standing between them and humanity. And as a result, they did not get what they needed from their rituals. And the energies have been, all things considering, pretty good since the 26th of December. Again, more work was needed on New Year's Eve because they were hard at it again. And I guess the message is, be the professional energy workers that we're here to be. We have a massive opportunity coming up, and to use the benefit of hindsight, the last mass meditation, that was a great success on January the 21st of 2019, where many of you who've been following Ground Crew Command will remember the interview with Cobra at the time, partly and primarily to promote that mass meditation. Anyway, that was a success, and as a result, we avoided a much, much harder and slower 2019, and that's guaranteed. So let's take this, let's handle this with the seriousness that it's deserved. Okay, and if we all do that collectively, we can expect a really good and exciting 2020. So moving on, I can get into details and the ins and outs of Fulford's latest posts, and you'll see the usual incremental forward improvements, which is great. And we have to sort of, two things. One is to sort of stick with it in terms of, primarily in terms of our participation rates with mass meditations. That's our only hope of altering the timelines in a way where you start to see those breakout physical changes, where your 3D physical life actually changes. All right? That's it. That's where it's all at. So my conversation with Mark is going to be a really interesting one, and it's all about the breakout of the light, the breaking out. For you history buffs, you remember just after the landing in Normandy in World War II, there was a very slow, grinding, not really getting anywhere kind of stalemate situation, basically, in the Normandy region of northern France, where they weren't really getting anywhere. They couldn't break out. The Allies, the Nazis were holding them at bay for the most part, with very incremental improvements, with all those, the bocage and the hedgerows being such difficult obstacles. And this was from the landings, which was June 4th, I think, or June 6th. And it took them like 6 weeks until mid-July for them to break out of Normandy. And within 2 months after that, France was liberated. So that's what we're looking at with 2020, the year of the breakout of the light. And we'll be discussing this with Mark of Great Awakening Report. I'll be discussing this with Laura Eisenhower in next week's broadcast. But keep in mind, folks, apart from getting the word out, signing up as a 144K ambassador and getting the word out, apart from that, we've got to focus, put all our focus on the mass meditation and astrological events of the 10th, 11th, and 12th of this month. The opportunity to make 2020 the breakout of the light, where the light really breaks out into the physical and forces the changes, whether Mr. Cabal man likes it or not. So we're coming close to that breakout if we play our cards right. I'm going to play the really awesome, really critical interview with Mark, who founded the Great Awakening Report, and he's really done his homework. It's a very impartial, non-ideologically aligned website that orientates people fairly well. Some of the resources and categories you can send to people you know that are unawakened or that you failed in trying to awaken in the past, and really good resource. They send out a weekly brief of the latest each week. Strongly recommended. Go check it out. And let's begin. Without further ado, this awesome interview is a great way to start the year. It's a great way to put the possibilities of 2020 in the right perspective. Because as always, folks, clarity is power. And it's now time for some clarity.
And here we are. This is Ground Crew Command Radio. You're listening to The Unknown Light Warrior. And I have with me Mark from greatawakeningreport.com. That's one website you'll not just want to check out, but is a pretty good tool to introduce people that you know that are unawakened to what's going on. It does it in a, how can I put it? I don't know if a gentle way is the right way to put it, but impartial and non-ideologically aligned kind of way. And I really applaud Mark for that. And say hello, Mark. Make sure we can hear you okay.
Hello. Thank you very much for having me on.
Fantastic. Yeah, thanks again for sending aside the time. You know, this is, for the most part, a 2020 predictions discussion, and you know, many people are sort of scratching their heads wondering, is this going to be the year, and how much can happen, how soon can it happen, will it happen, or is it just going to be another, you know, primarily frustrating year where things incrementally keep on progressing like they have been as always, but no real actual change. I guess I'm referring to that at the 3D day-to-day life level, because things are already, you know, with limited exception to the plasma plane, I guess. And Cobra followers know understand what I mean by that. With limited exception to that, the situation on the non-physical planes has pretty much transformed. Not quite complete, but transformed. I've been told that most of the so-called veil or the grid structures are actually on the physical plane at this point, just slightly at phase where we can't see them. And you're welcome to add in your 2 cents on that as well, Mark. But that dovetails with our first promised discussion or topic subheading, which is the disclosure predictions. So will 2020 be the year that the physical and non-physical dark ones are disarmed and or removed to the point where reunion, physical level reunion with our respective galactic families can occur. Initially, in a very private, inconspicuous, non-public way, I should imagine. What are your sources telling you, and what's your own intuition telling you about that, Mark? Go right ahead. The floor is yours.
No, thank you very much. Let's take 2019. A couple of things happened in 2019 that I think everybody needs to be aware of. There were two patents filed, and it was actually filed by the U.S. Navy Department. And one was on the anti-gravity craft, and on the patent was stated it's operational, which they never do that. And number two, the power device, which is the free energy source, there was another second patent that was filed, I think, a couple of days later. This was done in September. So this was, by the insiders, this was a huge step in basically letting the public know that these technologies exist. 2020, you're going to see a continued effort moving forward to have more technology disclosures. And so this is what we consider on the disclosure side, and that will continue to ramp up. You're also in 2019, that'll flow into 2020, is the U.S. Navy actually started to release all their pilot reports on UFOs. And so I think I heard in the state of Washington, last month, they had 3,800 UFO sightings. So these numbers of UFO sightings are increasing all over the world. And so what they're saying is they're thinking they're having a linkage here, a linkage between the technology disclosure through patents and also the UFO disclosures and UFO sightings. So that kind of matches with the people's public consciousness about their awareness of saying, hey, okay, we have this technology and we're aware of the technology, and now we're actually seeing it fly around. So on the disclosure side, now getting into the galactic family side of it, that's on an individual basis, and it's incremental. What I'm understanding this year is there will be those of us that are vibrating at the higher frequency and those of us that are requesting that we will begin to make contact with our galactic family. And so nobody knows exactly how that works. All I understand is that will begin to happen. It's an individual thing, and it's incremental. It's not a mass thing, as I understand, especially for 2020. So we will have more and more of those individuals that will come forward. We already have whistleblowers that are talking about their contacts, and now will that become more and more commonplace in 2020.
So basically, as far as the public side of things is concerned, you expect an increase in what's been happening in 2019 and becoming more sort of prolific, more overt, both in terms of UFO sightings and the public disclosures by the Navy, for example, and other, branches of the services and bureaucratic structures within government.
We have another. Yes, I have another tool that we use. One is pre-17. I think it was pre-July that we'd marked 17. Everything was soft disclosure. After July 2017, it's partial disclosure. What's been going on after Trump was elected? So you're having a civil war, and it's not necessarily over politics. It's over the disclosure of basically all this technology, UFOs, and our galactic family. So that continues today, and we're now what I consider impartial, but most of us that have already moved into full disclosure, we continue, and that's where full disclosure is coming from. It's coming from us. It's coming from the alternative media, and that's how it's going to happen. I don't see it happening with the U.S. government or any official body as far as full disclosure in 2020.
Yeah, true. I mean, the Navy public announcements regarding the patents, well, the two patents, I guess. That obviously, we're going to report it. The alternative media will report it and spread it. But obviously, we didn't hear a single thing from the establishment, aka cabal media. And we can expect that to continue as far as their behavior is concerned. But do you see, I guess, an intensification of the war over control of the disclosure narrative for 2020?
Yes, and let's talk about that. I can give some timeline or structure to it. This battle, everybody talks about, what's going to ramp up until election, and then after the election, sometime after the inauguration in 2021, that's when they feel like the war, both as above as below. So on all the levels, that's when they think sometime in the first part of 2021 that you'll actually say the planet is free. So what is the planet free of? It's free of basically control. It's, all the negative factions as far as their control of all the institutions. So I think, and then you move into the cleanup. Now the cleanup might take, I'll give you some numbers on that. If you look at just in America alone and not worldwide, but just in America alone, the deep state, if we want to, Illuminati, cabal, whatever labels you want to give them, it's basically their minions are 3 million. The actual ruling class of that is about 300,000. And if you want to track it, you track it through the sealed indictments. It's over 135,000 now. And to give you what's inside of each one of those sealed indictments, so you have 135,000, but you can have 99 names listed in each sealed indictment. So,
all right.
So when you do the math is, hey, 300,000 if that's the controlling minions. Well, we don't have a police force if you put them all together, military one. We don't have the level to make mass arrest. Now, we feel like a lot of those will be used for just sitting down with people, showing them their exposure, and that's where you have a lot of people retiring early or stepping down, or as you see, really, there's another list where you can actually track the resignations of CEOs and board members. Now that's been going on at very high, unusually high levels since 2017. And so just across the board.
My information is these big resignations have been going on since 2013, actually. Yes. I remember a long list since that year.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Well, and so basically, when you track the 130,000, 135,000 plus, so what they're going to do is they're going to use those. They're going to sit down with these individuals and they'll basically say, hey, you've got to either retire or resign. And we have all this evidence. You're going to be put on probation for the rest of your life. And the bottom line is just go away. They don't have the capacity to imprison or do whatever. And also, that's the part of forgiveness. There's a huge part that a lot of the insiders keep continually talking about is our group, who we are and what we are, and the evolution of us is forgiveness is a huge part of this whole process. Yeah. And so, and accepting the fact that the negative is part of all of us and inside of us, and that's why we have to continue to accept those differences of opinion regardless of where we are, and we've got to allow that. So that's where I go back to this whole conversation I'm having with you is everything I'm communicating to you, it's all incremental. And that's the best way to think about it. Because otherwise, if you're looking for some big event or something I don't know if it's going to happen that way. And I think it's going to, and also it's moving inside of us. Now, we will have certain people that we know or whatever, they will have aha moments of discovery and awakening. That is and will continue to happen and with those people. But so we have to be understanding that, it's us and what we do internally with ourselves and how we grow and how we remove all of our blocks and our negativity. And then that shows and shines that light. And that's why we call ourselves light workers, because that light is what reflects on people, and that's what helps them.
Yeah, it goes into Gaia's grids through
Right.
our grids. And the more you heal and clear internally, the more light comes in through your grids and into Gaia's grids and accelerates planetary liberation ultimately. And of course, then there's the other element where, people who've been following David Wilcock will know, because he used to say this a lot, that the cabal is simply the outer reflection of our internal shadow selves. So by facing and transmuting the so-called dark stuff inside us, really they're just unresolved issues that darkness comes through and is around, you really help the outer collective situation.
That's correct. The more we grow, the more we work on ourselves, the more we basically add to the collective. And so in the collective, we before we move into the politics that you have predictions, that's the collective consciousness that I think is being led through a lot of different individuals are leading in mass meditations. So that's the next step. There's two steps as I see it in the process, and it's an individual one. It's one where we really work on ourselves. And the second is that we join in mass meditation, and that creates the collective consciousness. And then there's a collective awareness, or there's critical mass. So this is another incremental stage of this. So there's different incremental critical mass events. And I understand that actually the event works in the opposite. It's that critical mass event that triggers it, and which is us. And that means we're ready to bring in, there's enough of us ready to bring in the fourth and fifth dimension. And so that's what basically, we're the ones that shifts, we're the ones that create it, but we have to do it together. And that gets back to your overall theme of unity. And so it's the collective consciousness that creates the unity that we're all working for.
That's right. And if enough of us get that consciousness up to where it needs to be, and therefore our internal state and overall vibration, it literally pulls humanity up with us. And that actually has just as big and this might be hard for people to hear, especially with the school of thought of we're just waiting for the event flash and that's what's going to save us and what's going to do it all for us. I can assure you the event flash will be the worst thing that could happen, at least to the physical plane of this planet, because if we're not ready, both internally and collectively, we won't be able to accrete and be that, I suppose, receptacle, that receiving dish for the extreme high frequencies of the flash, and then ascend. As a result of that, all it's going to do is cause internal freak out factors and cataclysms up the wazoo because we couldn't receive it. We couldn't accrete that light from the event flash. And it's really important people understand that, especially our star seeds that are here to, be the example and lead humanity. And I know it's hard to put yourself in that mindset, if you will, when you got your friends and relatives, friends and family sort of ridiculing and laughing at you about what you're trying to wake them up to, but there's good news coming on that front as well, folks. Just bear with me.
Let me add to what let me add another, once again, incrementally, let me add another concept to what that might be helpful to what you were saying. It looks like to me this galactic flash ascension what they call a micronova, and we document a lot of they're documenting a micronova event in Earth, on the Earth, in geology or whatever, 12,500 and 25,000, and actually going further back. And so Earth's history, the surface of the planet has and I'm quite sure all the planets in our solar system, have this micronova event. And I'm quite sure the micronova event is a standard that basically runs throughout our galaxy and our universe. And these are what are known as the Ascension events. So what I'm understanding now is that basically could be a 3-step process, and there could be, as you know, all the waves have been increasing, and all that's been adding to our consciousness. So there could be a 3-step process where actually you have maybe 2 micronovas preceding the final micronova. And so the final micronova is the big event you talk about. But these 2 earlier events that could be spread apart within a 5-year basis or whatever, that's where we all step up and we do even a whole nother level of work where we come back and maybe we move into another space anyway where we really help people. So there's this, as the study goes and the research goes that, I personally have been doing, it's just really interesting what I'm finding. There's this continual challenge for all of us to not only continue to prepare ourselves and grow, but also that there are going to be different stages where many of us will be required to do different levels of communication and different levels of disclosure and working with people. And so that to me is an ongoing process. So when I looked at this incremental step, and I've gotten it from 2 or 3 different sources, and these are fairly reliable, which in the subject of Ascension, it's hard to find anything, that's actually concrete. But the thing is that seemed to make more sense to me. It seemed to have more logic to it, and that and then it really gives people time, which is what we want. And now let's go back and talk about disclosures again, or predictions, or bring it back to the current time frame. So that's what this is all setting up for. This is all the disclosure, political, to give you more specifics on the political side. You asked what's going to happen, or the wheels.
Well, before we get into that, sorry to interrupt.
Sure.
I just want to finish off, and we'll certainly get into what you were just beginning with there, but just to finish off and wrap up with the disclosure predictions. You gave your assessment and prediction regarding, the numbers of actual cabal members, numbering 300,000, but there's something like 3 million altogether. And I suspect that's in the United States alone.
Yes.
And that the majority, the other 3 million or so, they'll be, approached and reconciled with after the main height, the peak of their power, the 300 cabal members are sort of removed.
Well, the criminal activity is housed in that 300,000. Those are the ones that are crimes against humanity. They've stolen money, that kind of stuff. Yeah, that'll all be shut down, right? Right.
If not this year, certainly next year. Although a lot is being shut down since 2017.
Well, what they're doing is they're shutting down the institutions, but I understand it'll take until about 2024 to clean up, all the people. And so that's kind of the institutions. You're seeing he's cleaned up the DOJ. They've cleaned up the FBI, especially at the upper levels, which is what they had to do. That's where all the criminality is. But you're going to see the State Department, the criminality there is unbelievable, off the charts. And so, but anyway.
Yeah,
go on ahead.
No, it's good that you mentioned that. Well, what do you think of this particular timeline possibility? Let's just call it that. Their main operations, criminal activities, child trafficking, drug trafficking, arms, and so forth will continue to be shut down like they have been throughout 2020. And, well, actually, let me see how I can set this one up. A lot of the 300,000 will either be, arrested or neutered or neutralized, if I can use those terms. And the mass arrests will continue in early 21, but basically they're going to be more or less shut down in terms of their ability to really do anything by hopefully before the US presidential elections. Now, many people's concern is, the 3 million or so across North America that, actively and aggressively practice, whether you want to call it Luciferianism or black magic, etc. They're still going to be around in 2021. Mainly because there's just so many of them. It's just huge volume that law enforcement and the military will need years to narrow down each individual and arrest them and charge them for the appropriate murder charges, because their practice is centered around human sacrifice. What might, let's just say, have an impact on that is if we can make or have that galactic family reunion sometime in 2020, our own private selves in that non-public, inconspicuous private way, and basically our off-world galactic families can now intervene directly, not indirectly, on the surface situation. Would that give us, the average starseed, the ability to harness those off-world resources to find and literally beam up or pick up every single one of these Luciferians or black magicians across the whole planet? You know what I mean? Because, there's always the odd Draco or reptilian incarnate or dark soul that don't actually even know they're dark. Everything collapses around them, but they don't know they're dark. And those are the sorts of beings that need to be picked up as well. And that sort of thing occurring in 2021. What do you think of that sort of situation? Because once not necessarily the disclosure process, but once that physical contact is allowed to be made privately in significant numbers with starseeds, resources become available to be able to just pick these charming characters up and offer them, make the offer, which is rehabilitate or recycle. And recycling means being taken to the galactic central sun, where their soul is actually literally absorbed back into source. Now, I know that's a little long-winded, but that's as short as I could keep it. Do you think, especially...
No, let me... No, that's correct. Let me give you, break it down. From our research, basically, the term that was used, we moved into a period of what we call the Great Separation in 2017. So the Great Separation is 2019. So it's 2019, 2020, and 2021. And so that Great Separation, and also you're going to see whatever you think happened this last year on the negative side, you're going to see it ramped up 100% from what I'm hearing. This is from the negative side. And so what we all
have... or what?
Yes.
Yep.
Now, what's going to ramp that up is, remember, everything that's happening in the impeachment process or whatever is basically the people that are yelling and screaming the loudest, they're all guilty of what they're accusing Trump of.
Yeah.
And so that if you want to see it, it's projection, just reverse everything they're saying as they're saying it about themselves. And that's the easiest way to understand what's going on. But the thing that you're talking about is this great separation. Is that, and also with the contact or whatever. So those of us, I break it down as 30, 30, 30, and the 30, in increments of there's 10% of us awake. There's 20% in the process. There's another 30% that once we get after you get mass arrest started, and what really starts that is the basically unsealing of these sealed indictments. Once that process begins, then we move into that period of time to where all of a sudden now things are really being exposed to the public. And going back to that 300,000, 3 million, it's the 300,000, the corruption, the evil. That's the satanic cult is the 300,000. It's not the 3 million. The 3 million.
No, you're right. They're all part of the satanic cult.
Right.
Yeah, I didn't explain that right, but yes.
Right.
All...
But the practicing ones and the ones that are either about 300,000 or whatever. So the point is, with what's happening or what we're going through, we have to be aware of this, all the stuff going on over here. But in actuality, it's your awareness is really not going to be there. Your awareness is going to be over here with contacting our galactic brothers and the contacting you, and you're going to have all kinds of other things begin to happen. And that's why they call it separation. We're going to separate from that. Now, as far as coming back together and more unification and more people, so that other 30%, they're going to wake up kind of after the 2021 period, let's say 22 to 25 or whatever. So that's kind of that second group. Now, what we all have to understand is could be 30 to 50% of the global population that just aren't going to wake up. And they're basically going to make a decision not to. They're going to make a conscious decision not to wake up. And so that's where we have to understand in our 3D reality, we all have to accept that, have to embrace it, and have to love them regardless of what their decisions are, good, bad, or indifferent. And so, but that's that incremental process. And that's where I don't see any big revelations coming that will shift anything in a dramatic way. It'll just be incrementally, as all of us have already woken up ourselves. And now we're getting just confirmation daily if you're looking for it. But then as I see others that are close to me, wow, I can't even, I can't show them anything that would, trigger them to awake at this moment based on where they are. So that's the separation in families, separation in businesses, separation in partnerships, separation across the board. So we have to be prepared for that part and be accepting and loving, but at the same time, stick with that process of doing our work and standing in our light and accepting everybody.
Yeah. Well, I would generally agree with that, but for the most part, I suppose I'm comparatively a bit more optimistic because so we know, and we know for sure that the disclosure process, both from the cabal media and the alternative media, is just going to continue, and there will be a point where that 50 to 30% of the population that you say just won't wake up no matter what, their world will continue to collapse. The perception of reality or map of reality will continue to collapse. And the fear and the anxiety is just going to increase from where it is already. And what do you think about predictions that such people, ironically, are going to be in so much fear that they're going to start to run to people like us after seeing more and more things like UFO disclosure in the mainstream media and so on and so forth?
Well, let me go back.
Exists?
Yeah. Let me go back and explain just a little bit more about the Ascension process. Mm-hmm. The ones that choose to go through darkness or catastrophes or that kind of thing, and that's part of where their energy's at and what they're doing. Our higher self is where these decisions are made. We make them. We make those decisions where we go and what we do. And so part of, as I understand it, that percentage of group, they'll just move on and continue 3D somewhere else on another planet or another situation. So, and they've chosen that they want to continue to, they're not done. They're just not done experiencing this third dimensional experience. And so part of their soul progression, and that's what I'm trying to say, not, is we have to allow that, accept that. It's just not their time. They're not ready. So that's that part of just accepting. And so that I'm trying to move this back to a positive, because it is positive for them, even though we might view them as they're still in the dark. They're moving on and they're just wanting to recreate, and they want to stay in their lessons and they want to learn. So we have to accept that. But the other part is, the spiritual part for all of us, the awakening, that has been an ongoing process. It will continue to go on. We will continue to be a part of. I think you'll see just in, the connection, there will be little things that we will all trigger us that will be confirming for us. And I think the other thing I wanted to say about what I sense happening is that we're all either finding our village or we're creating our village. And so that's also part of the great separation that started in 2019, is that we are now beginning to put those pieces together of kind of what that group is coming together. So a lot of us that have been on this lonely journey, if you will, of, we feeling isolated and disconnected, or whatever you want to call it, from certain people that we love or are connected to. Now we're going to begin to rebuild that, and we're going to rebuild those families and that home and that connection. And so that's the exciting thing. The exciting thing about this is that's kind of we're feeling that with each other. When we talk to each other, there's this immediate, it doesn't take long. In fact, it takes seconds to, when you meet somebody, you identify that, oh my gosh, they're vibrating at the frequency, and wow, let's go. Let's have a great conversation. Yeah. So that's the fun part of all this, is that's beginning to form. That it could even go into being in the same communities with each other, being in the same location, moving, shifting. All those things are going to be happening in definitely the next 2 years.
Yeah, and we'll have, the autonomy in every sense of the word to be able to do that, all that stuff, be with who we want, where we want. I mean, based on our soul evolution and path and purpose, obviously, certainly the autonomy will be far greater if we stick with it, that is. All right, let's move on to the political predictions, which in some respects, I feel like I'm reluctant to go on to or not be bothered with. And the reason for that is because what happens politically on the 3D surface is so heavily influenced, if not decided by, how our mass meditations go on those critical dates.
Yes.
Whether we reach critical mass with our mass meditations every single month. So we can talk predictions for 2020 with politics or disclosure or whatever. But you got to remember, folks, it's all from the standpoint of the current timeline. Okay, we can only predict things from the current timeline that we're on. Based on the current timeline that we're on, we're heading in XYZ direction. That's likely to happen. And we can make predictions, and those predictions could be fairly accurate. Obviously in good company as far as that's concerned. But when we do the right thing, when enough of us turn up on the energetic plane and do mass meditations at, advanced, powerful mass meditations at a critical mass as well, the timeline shifts again, and previous predictions are either redundant or they're going to happen a lot sooner. So what might have happened over a 12-month period is now going to happen in 6 months, for example, which is quite often the norm after any successful mass meditation. So, if you don't like or not happy with or frustrated with whatever we predict with the political and even disclosure predictions for 2020, well, change that, okay, by showing up to mass meditations, whether it's the 144K group or other groups, Joe Durand, mass meditations, knock yourself out. As long as we don't take things sitting down, that's the main thing, and really take charge. So with that, long-winded introduction into political predictions, you've got a great article on greatawakeningreport.com from some great contributors, and just to read out a couple of snippets of that, and I think it's on the homepage. We'll clarify that with you in a minute. But basically, to read out a couple of snippets, it goes, quote, transparency will uncover all sins, secrets, and undisclosed science and technologies. And thousands will be indicted in Hollywood and Washington, D.C., which is really happening already. But again, it will ramp up in a big way in 2020. Silver and gold will rise dramatically. Trump will win again. In other words, the White Hats will win again. The Clintons and high-level Obama administration officials will be prosecuted for their crimes against humanity and treason. All the ugly truths of our nation will surface. So the nation will go through a cleansing it has never gone through before. The truth about Ginsburg's death will be revealed. Declassification of secret documents shall bring down the deep state. The central bankers shall lose control, and we will become a sovereign nation. Possible martial law when the big-name politicians are arrested. Everything will change. Everything will change, including a financial reset as the president puts us back on the gold standard. So that's predicted for 2020. Great things will happen as we go from dark to light. These things shall come to pass. And the big question to all of that is, can all this actually be done before the US presidential elections? Or will half of it or most of us still have to wait till after the presidential election? And is that even what the plan of the White Hats is? So go ahead, Mark. Where would you like to begin in trying to handle that one?
Yeah, thank you very much. Yes, it's. Let's put it this way. It's a military operation that they're under. So in any, battle plans always change. So I would say what you just read that's the objective for 2020. And so now what will happen? Does it fold over or move into 2021? What I did hear, this is one insider's observation, and I think there's actually two that I've heard it from, is that basically the planet won't be free until sometime after the first quarter of 2021. That's after the election. So what does free mean? And so was it basically broken down? And then in the same language, they said, well, it's going to take to clean it up. Okay, they maybe release control, but to clean it up, that means the negative factions will still be out there, sleeper cells or whatever you want to call them, but they'll still be running around to maybe 2024. So that's why I say incremental is the best way to get your mindset about all this information, is not get locked in on a date or a time with anything, but really basically keep working from the inside out and keep meditating and keep shifting. And what we're doing to create what I would consider move from partial disclosure to full disclosure on everything is through meditation. And that's how we're shifting the knowledge, the information. Now, what you're seeing in 2020, you're just seeing the crumbling of institutions. And those institutions they're no longer serving us. So we don't really need, because of the internet and some of the other things that are worldwide, we don't need these governments as they exist today. And so that's the dramatic change you're seeing. So that's crumbling from within. And then we are collectively going to move to something different. Don't know what that is. Don't know what that'll look like. I don't think anybody does. And that's that part of the plans are definitely laid. They're out there. They're in place. but how that whole and that's why we use in our website transition. We're basically in the early stages of transition. And then there's, at the end of transition, there's transformation. And that transformation is that 5D experience.
Yeah.
And so that's where we put timelines, or we put estimations on things and everything. If a lot of us that are, have been at this a long, long time, boy, we've all been blown out of the saddle on timelines and to get fixated on it. And anyway, that's the way I would describe it.
Yeah. All right. So you're sort of basically clarifying that the white hats do intend or plan for all of that litany of predictions that I just read out to occur in 2020 or within 2020.
You will see some evidence of all those things in 2020. That's what that meant. Whether you see completion or conclusion, that I doubt. That's too exactly hard to say. Very well said.
Yeah, thank you, because that's where I want to. I can't stress this enough. See yourselves as timeline selectors, all right? Timeline manipulators has a bit of a negative connotation to it, but it's important to understand that one of the fairly basic MOs of the Cabal and negative ETs and non-physical darkness, such as the Archons, has been to quite literally go back in time and shut down or intervene in a given point in time where things went in a very positive direction, and then they would return back to whatever realm or timeline they came from. And that was standard operational procedures for darkness of all kinds, from whatever realm or plane.
You know what? Can I give you something on that?
Yep.
Just to tie in with you, because I know our time's short.
Yep.
The reason why the galactic, the nova, the micronova event is so important, and the reason why I don't think everything really gets cleaned up on the negative. One thought is that actually Lucifer is AI. We haven't talked about artificial intelligence, but basically Google's AI, yada, yada, yada. It's basically in place and it's active and it's working. So what the freedom of the planet is basically, it's basically 1,000 times CME from the sun that basically converts to an EMP on the surface of the planet, and that basically neutralizes all of this basically technology. And that's the technology that's basically being infiltrated. It's being focused on us, all of their energy waves and their 5D or 5G, all the stuff that they put in place that are basically hurting our health and hurting the way we think in our minds, everything that's being convoluted with all that. So that's what wipes all that out. That's why they use it. It's funny. It's the evolution of, how this works in our universe, is that we all evolved to this state. And what Lucifer has is that critical point where we're in battle of whether he wins with technology, where we have transhumanism versus spiritualism. What is transhumanism? Transhumanism is we're bionic arms, we're bionic eyes, we got digital inputs in our head, whatever chips or whatever in our head. So that's where we are. And so part of this whole freedom that's where I go back to that Ascension is a 3-step process, is that's what cleans it up. That's what totally cleans it up. Now that could happen in 2020, or it could delay until 2024. Nobody knows. Nobody understands that. But that event is what definitely the Archons and those that you're talking about, that's what cleans all that out, as I understand it. And so the military projects, they can neutralize them, they can bring them down, they can neutralize the threat, which is they've had a lot of threats, in the near Earth orbit, and won't get into that. But anyway, the point is that that's what cleans it all up, is that micronova. And so, anyway, I'll stop there.
Yeah, and there's certainly truth to that. From my understanding, that's what completes the process of clearing it out and freeing the planet, and that we're sort of well in the process already of clearing it out, and that just completes it. The hardest, the last aspects of whatever the block is to planetary liberation.
Yeah, and see, what made sense is that, so now you need time. So once you clean it all out, so now you need time to go back to those that are basically still in the dark or still rejecting basically the information that's right in front of them. Then you go back, and that's where where the work begins, where we really step in and we really try to help people, make that decision. But here again, to awaken. But here again, it's still their choice. But that's where we really start to work, as I understand it. And so that's that. What's really beautiful about this process is that there's so many levels of allowing people to learn, to grow, to come on their own, to make a decision. But it's an individual decision that they're all making, and that we continue this process of trying to help people. And I wanted to leave you with one short thing, is how I approach it. The political process right now is kind of in the most public domain of information that we're all talking about. In the public discourse or conversations, when most everybody I meet now is a synchronistic, meeting, meaning I'm supposed to meet them. And so it's easy to steer the conversation, but what's easy to talk about is you can see the corruption in political, you can see it. But that's, if I was suggesting to any of your viewers or anybody, that's where it's an easy place to talk about the differences, or talk about, helping people transition or helping people see things that are different. So just take the information that's out there, it's in the public domain, and see how it's shifting and crumbling. Obviously, fake news, we can all, I don't care who you are. Everybody can see what that is, to at least some degree.
Yeah.
But that's the best way to kind of, you said, how do you work with people? How do you talk with them? Just take the info, go with where they want to go with where they want to, listen, try to really listen to what they're open to talking about. And then the last thing I'll leave you with is, I always ask for their permission. Can I share something with you? Can I share this with you?
Yeah,
I do a lot of research, and so I have some information. And then most everybody I leave with is most everybody goes, well, can I have your website? And I'd love to take a look at it. So,
yeah, exactly.
And I share that. That's my process.
Yeah. Once they see that they're being validated and heard, and being asked permission for, in terms of taking them to the next step. Yeah, that makes the trick. They teach. I know they teach that sort of stuff in sales, because they know you can't just push people into it, no matter how right you may be.
Well, where we have to be careful in the next couple of years, especially, is that all of us are going to be validated. But the problem is if we seek validation, then that's pushing. And that's where we cross the line. That's what's hard for all of us, is that we've been on this lonely road. Come back, we've all been beat up pretty bad in one way or another, and so we're going to get validated. And so to stay humble in that validation, and that's why I think a lot of us are still working. Boy, we're coming out the other end, and we're going to be humble. And so that's the way that people are going to see in us the light.
Yeah, so you're saying get yourself validated by validating them first.
Very good. Very good. Very smart.
Remember that, they're deliberately being not just lied to, but even radicalized.
Very good.
Wow. By the cabal. So it's important to keep that in mind.
Huge.
Yeah.
That's a huge statement. Huge. Very good.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah, deliberately, perfectly, highly educated, well-meaning individuals I've never seen them, the ones that are unawakened and follow the cabal media, I've never seen them so intolerant.
Yes,
That's
exactly.
because they're deliberately being radicalized.
Yeah. And remember when you're in the low frequency, you're in the reptilian mind, and that reptilian mind wants to fight.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
And they are leveraging that reptilian mind.
Yeah.
And so that's where we just have to step away. There's really nothing you can do.
Yeah. If you can drop the breadcrumbs, and if they're ready, they'll take them. And then again, we work. Mark and I are continuing to work on resources and tools to make things easier to, gently usher them in a certain constructive direction. And we'll continue doing that. But the main point I want to finish off with that I was beginning to make is for us, the Awaken Aware, to really adopt the mindset and understanding of being a timeline selector. Okay, if you want XYZ to happen in 2020, join the mass meditation, especially the one coming up, and be that timeline selector by taking control of the energies. So see yourself as that, as a timeline selector, because the power is there now. The ability is there, especially with advanced mass meditations in particular. All right, so I want to finish that point with that because it's a really big deal, because God knows the dark ones have very deliberately been timeline selectors. So we're going to win the timeline wars. That's the point. All right. Let's just try to finish off with the 3D side of things. U.S. Attorney General Bill Barr spoke with Martha McCallum, calling out George Soros for subverting the legal system in the U.S. and then creating more crime and violence. And the fact that the fact that any high-level senior U.S. government official is calling out George Soros, that in itself is a big positive sign and breakthrough. But will this be the year that the White Hats take down the deep state and Soros? And with the following year being the takedown of the bloodlines, the highest level bloodline members themselves in 2021. What do you think about that, Mark?
Yes. It's interesting. If you look at the history, let's say 2017, they pulled the low minions. You see pedophilia surfacing. Just to let you know from a footnote, the Jeffrey Epstein is not over with. That is just the tip of the iceberg. What's getting ready to come down will be huge in regards. And also, if you look, he's an octagon. He had about 8 sides to him, and one side was pedophilia. There's drug trafficking. There's everything involved with that. But the other side of it is that well, go on ahead. I'll let go on ahead.
Well, the so-called deep state, especially in the US, and the senior cabal politicians and George Soros, they're generally considered mid-level cabal, and the bloodlines themselves, although truth be told, they are a meritocracy to a degree as well. So let's just say P2 Freemason Lodge, the members of the Crown Corporation in London, etc. They're sort of at the top, right? Let alone the 13 bloodline members themselves.
Yeah,
they're sort of at the top. And do you think, if all goes well in 2020, we can expect the actual removal of them in 2021 if the mid-level guys like the Schumers, the Pelosi's, the Clintons and Obamas and Rumsfelds and Cheney's, those fake conservatives, mid-level being taken out in 2020, the highest level taken out in 2021. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I've lost my track there. The the low level minions that I was talking about, that's what's been going on since 2017. Now what you're going to see in 2020 is basically the higher levels and the heads. So the heads, but they had to clean up the DOJ and they had to clean up the FBI. They couldn't do it. And also what's secretly going on behind is to track how many judges that I think he's over 100 now that he's put into place. So this deep state, this 3,300,000, let's just call them the 300,000. Well, it's the judge system. It's what you're going to find out. What people are going to be shocked is even in their home communities. Your police chief, your attorneys in town, your whatever.
Yeah.
And this is the way that they protect it on a national basis. This is the way they let these guys off the hook. They wouldn't pursue them. Any cases would come up. This is how they protected each other.
Yeah. So what the attorneys and the judges were part of the same club. Were part of the
absolutely.
Whole thing.
And so it's all this membership, and so they would protect each other. So anyway, the bottom line is the answer is yes. In 2020, as far as anything that we've said in this conversation, I do believe that you will see the heads at that level begin to roll and begin to be either quietly taken away. Some of them might take themselves out. You'll see a lot of different things going on, resignations to all kinds of level of things that'll go on. But yeah, you begin to see those. And also really where it comes down to is the unsealed indictments basically tells the public the story. That lets the information out about the criminal activity. And that's when you have that happen, then you can move to mass arrest or high level arrest. So it's really this FISA had to come forward. Now, basically, it moves into Barr and his attorney that working with him to basically move through indictments and also arrest.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so a ramping up in a big way of what we've already been seeing in 2018 and 19, and then in 2021. So possibly, again, if enough of us show up for the mass meditations, the completion even of the liberation of the United States of America, with 2021 being a more Europe-focused cleanup, because that's where the highest level negative secret societies, the P2 Freemason Lodge, Crown District of London, the Vatican, and basically the bloodlines, most of them, the majority of them reside over there. And you think it'll be a more Europe-centric cleanup in 2021?
I think it's going to be both. There's another thing too, is in the financial side, we haven't talked about the financial part of this, but that's going to be led in some cases. I can give you some information on that, and this could happen within the 13th to the 17th of January. Is you could see, I can give you names. You definitely Deutsche Bank and J.P. Morgan.
Oh yeah.
And there's going so what's really interesting when you talk about and you bring all this together about 2020. You got the financial side, you've got the sealed indictment side, you've got government, you've got all these different things that could lead the way. We don't know which one trips the switch as far as, but the either replacement or rebooting the financial system is a major event.
Yeah.
And so what triggers that? That's what I think they don't know. They have a plan in place. They're moving in a plan in place. But as events begin to transpire, it could there are probably 4 or 5 things that could lead it, trigger it. And then they could trigger it. And then what they're going to do is once one thing triggers, then they'll flow everything through, which I think they've already thought through. So that's when things get kicked up and they open the door and they really start bringing down some of those people. But anyway, 2020, without a doubt, is a huge pivotal year.
And remember, folks, we need to be there. Without that energetic cleanup, energetic support, the white hats will require 2 years to do what they otherwise could have in 1 year. And that's where we step in. And I'm not going to stop saying that. Okay, that's just the way it is. So we've got to treat our role with the, I suppose, dignity, legitimacy, and seriousness and professionalism that we're here to, as far as our souls are concerned, anyway.
Hey, I just thought of one more thing I need to share is that also 2020 is going to be a big flu year. And so there's, I had an issue with antibiotics, but anyway, crystalline vitamin C, if we want to get into this, but crystalline buffered vitamin C, taking in larger dosage, no problem. It goes through your system, but that is the best protection you can have. And so I just wanted to share, number one, the 2020 on the health side, it is your best protection, is a high quality grade. You can't buy it in the store. Look for something that's on the internet that's more high quality, but a crystalline buffered vitamin C, and the buffered allows you to take the higher dosages, but and anyway,
actually absorb it into your cells.
Absorb it, right? But that will not only alleviate the symptoms, but it'll also provide protection. And so anyway, I just got to download this today. Share that. So anyway,
no, it's important that you did. It's important that you did because although chemtrails have drastically dropped a lot, there's been a few in the past few days since the solstice mass meditation, because of the mass meditations that we did on the 21st and the 25th that were crucial. With the exception of those important dates, I've seen very little and certainly far less chemtrails. But, they're not completely removed. They're going to try to spread God knows what through them, among other means of, transferring, whatever things that, bugs, viruses, things that weaken the immune system, etc. So let me see. Michael Snyder, who's one of the contributors at the GreatAwakeningReport.com, writes, and this is regarding predicted calamities, particularly in California. What I'm talking about is an event that will completely wipe out entire cities and that the region will never recover from. As I have detailed repeatedly, authorities have warned us that everything west of Interstate 5 will be toast, unquote, when an absolutely massive seismic event along the Cascadia subduction zone sends a gigantic tsunami sweeping inland. And without a doubt, that day is coming. Now, I don't doubt that day is coming, but, and it's a big but, if such a, I don't think he's taking into account the off-world influence, right? Namely galactic confederation and sphere beings, etc. I don't think he's taken that into consideration. And what I mean by that is, if such a disaster does not help the planetary liberation process, the positive off-world groups will stop it and typically let it occur after the event, or at least after the cabal is completely removed from power. Now, to add to that, many of us know that positive ET groups have been either stopping such calamities for quite some time now, or reducing their severity, by sort of prolonging the event in a more reduced way. In the case of earthquakes, causing or controlling it and allowing many smaller quakes over time, and thus preventing a massive disastrous quake. Generally, and that's what the positive ETs have been doing for, decades now. Now, generally, so what I'm trying to say is I don't doubt Michael Snyder's information that he's working with or basing his article on. That's true. But there has been and still is a very big element that needs to be discussed, which is the positive ET, manipulation or handling of these things, these natural disasters. That certainly would have happened. Generally, the cabal can hide in the distraction of a massive disaster, which is part of the reason why they've been trying to start World War III 1,000,001 times, especially in the last 10 years. Let's not forget, there's been, and then there's the other layer to this whole thing. And this is why many people have trouble grappling with the overwhelming confusion of the whole planetary liberation, because they can't think, many don't think in terms of layers, all right? A layer within a layer within a layer. So the third layer with this whole thing is, especially when it comes to Southern California, we have to not forget there's been massive conventional military operations, essentially theaters of war, going on underground in California, to clearing out the negative ET affiliated cabal underground bases there. And what that means is lots and lots of big explosions. Okay. So again, it's important to mention that. And
let me add to that. You are correct. We have a whole section that concentrates on what we call global geophysical weather, geophysical activity. The swarms up and down the coast, and actually what they're now, the science is coming through, it's all connected. Even the Madrid fault is connected to the Cascadia fault, and what could trigger it could kind of trigger something that could move across. So the idea is that what we're reporting on, or what we're getting a lot more evidence, is number one, they've now sequestered the reporting, or they're not allowing it. Definitely in Oregon and off the coast. So we're not getting, what leaks through, or what does get through, is a lot of swarms. Now, I think meditation and the work that we're doing brings down the severity of what you're talking about, and what you just read is kind of, I would say it's more of a worst case scenario. But the evidence that we're getting, until I think the micronova or whatever, as I read it, or as the research is these geophysical events will continue to ratchet up. And so part of the geophysical side of things is the awakening, is some people only awaken when they are confronted. And so that's kind of part of what we are in 3D. So part of that has to be allowed to happen. I do not know how that works. I will just tell you that evidence has proven that things have those. You could see in 2020, we haven't talked about it, but you could see 3 hurricanes hit the East Coast at the same time. That's one thing that's been laid on the table. And so, so when you go around the world and you look at these events, and you look at the escalation of 100 times as far as with earthquakes, or there's some really good sources. All this is being basically these galactic waves, the energy waves, and what's going on with the sun. This is all heating up the core of our planet, which is actually changing the geophysical part of what's happening on our surface. So anyway, I think is to be prepared. Now, the one last thing I'll leave with you is most of the, if not all, of the insiders, they've all moved away from the coast. And so that is, they don't talk about it very much, but when they do, but all of them have landed inland. And so I'll just leave it at that. But anyway.
No, it is true. Look, the calamities are sort of inevitable in one way, just from the micronovas and the main event flash. But the goal is, this is my intuitive understanding, the goal is to more or less get the planet liberated before they hit, all right, because in that timeline, whole large sections of populations where a calamity is going to hit can be airlifted out by Galactic Confederation ships. It's sort of not really an issue. The goal is to A, free the planet before they hit, and B, in the meantime, reduce the severity of the calamities and earthquakes and hurricanes and whatnot through a combination of mass meditations and off-world involvement, interruption or whatever you want to call it. And especially with the mass meditations, the loudness and the fear and the trauma of coming from the collective human pain body, to use Eckhart Tolle terms, that'll increase, which will help bring about these calamities. And again, it's up to starseeds to heal, clear the human collective pain body, typically through mass meditations. So once again, folks, if you think you're just an ordinary civilian, guess again, right?
I just got something that's really interesting. What you're talking about is when we all convert, one is light workers and then we become boots on the ground. And I think that is going to be part of what we're all a part of. What is boots on the ground? That's when heroes surface. That's when people really become interactive with people, with different crises or different things that'll go on. So what we're really talking about, you and I, in this situation, is just being prepared. It's just being prepared. And what the internal work, what it is you're moving away from fear. Yeah. What is all this stuff? All this stuff is manufactured if we're living in a third dimensional hologram. Okay, so great. We're all, whatever happens, we're all safe. It doesn't matter. But what we're doing is in these situations where fear is really, really elevated to a very high point, which is what's kind of happening on a global basis. That's what we are as light workers, is we have no fear. And I think that's a really good way. And we might convert some of us boots on the ground. Yeah, that's right. I mean, who knows what's going to happen if we, step up and do the right thing and participate as far as our sole purpose is concerned. And it'll all be very good and exciting, intense, but good and exciting. So ultimately, the biggest and most important take-home message for all of us to finish off this discussion is mass meditations are absolutely beyond crucial to reduce or in some cases avoid violent upheavals, both, geopolitical, societal, and in terms of natural physical cataclysms, internal self-healing and clearing, which in turn brings in more light through your grids and into Gaia's grids, has the same effect, reduction or avoidance of violent upheavals of all kinds that I've just mentioned. And it's a huge critical responsibility. We have to accept this responsibility with open arms, because that's what Goddess Gaia is dearly, almost pleading for us to do. And we have to answer that call. If you have any fear or any form of pain right now, take it up to the teams or your teams and shut it. The resources are there. If you need this sort of stuff or struggle in the past, the ICB is right there. It's all there for the taking. It really is, regardless, in spite of your past, of so-called failures in the past. Failing in the past does not mean failing in the future. And we have to get that. And how would you like to finish off, Mark? Last parting words. I think what I'd like to offer to everybody is what we've created on the website and inside the report, it's a intuitive. It allows you individually to go where you want to go. It's an intuitive coach, and it allows you to seek where your interests are first. But it also, if you look at the tabs on the left, the overview gives you an idea of what the big picture is. Here are the focus of what we have 8 primary topic headings. These are the things that are important in this field. So if somebody new coming in or new awakening, they can look at this information, find out where you're comfortable. A lot of people would be the geopolitical, would kind of be where they're wanting information.
Yeah.
And so then you just take your time, you intuitively move through all the other kind of topic headings at your pace. Whenever you're ready, it's a lot of information. But the other thing too is that we found a lot of people, when they've reached a point of where beyond what they know or information where your friends or family or somebody wants more, you can recommend our site as a place to support your information and then what you're trying to communicate or what you're trying to. So it's a helpful tool for you to support, obviously, what you're trying to do. And in the future, we hope to have a coaching program to help people really take their own skills to another level. So I would leave you with that. And thank you very much for the opportunity of spending this time with you. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, this is the main reason, initially at least, why I wanted you to get you onto the show, because you've laid things out really well for both the advanced and both the layman or newbie that's, not even awake. And that overview 2-minute video, it sort of encompasses things really well. Such a massive topic, which is not easy. You've categorized things very nicely, and it does make it easy for people to go to that section, particularly on the left pane, that they're drawn to, in the way that, it still keeps them relatively orientated. But it's a very professional, legitimate looking website. It looks credible, and you've done a great job. So that's why I'm quite happy and proud to promote it. So that's www.greatawakeningreport.com. Check out that 2-minute video in the overview, and then check out those other, it's fairly easy and to digest and orientate yourself with, more so than I've seen any other website or online resource. So that's why I'm happy to, be a proponent. And thank you, Mark, for setting aside the time and coming on.
Well, thank you very much, and I wish everybody a happy new year and an absolutely safe, secure, and wonderful awakening 2020.
Yes, you can proceed with courage, folks. We just have to be pragmatic about things as well. So that's Mark from the greatawakeningreport.com, folks. Go check out. It's got a free subscription as well as a paid subscription, and great tool to send to people that you're maybe having a stubborn time with. You're trying to wake them up, or in the past. So check it out. And this is the Unknown Light Warrior from Ground Crew Command Radio, headquarters for the 144K. Stay tuned, folks. Watch your inbox really carefully, because we got really massive events coming up between the 10th and the 12th, and we're going to get more into it with the wonderful Laura Eisenhower in the coming days. So watch your inbox really closely, and I will see you all real soon, folks. Build up your energy.